Hi everyone. In this bite-sized bit, we're going to discuss how we take text input from the user and convert it to proper numeric format in our code so that we can do mathematical manipulations. Let's go ahead and get started. For demonstration purposes for this video, I have created a new project that I've called BoonTed Add to Numbers. And it's a very simple application. I've created two text boxes. The first text box is called txt first number, and the second text box is called txt second number. I've added a button, which I've called btn add, with the text add them. And then I've added two labels for first number and second number. The name of my form is frm add to numbers. The text for my form is add to numbers. Fairly simple. I've also created code that is associated with the click event for my button. And the code is fairly simplistic. It has input, processing, and output. For the input, I'm collecting the text property for each text box and storing that information in a separate variable for each, int first number and int second number. Then I'm trying to do some math where I add the first number and second number together and store that information in something called int sum. And then I'm creating a string variable that creates a phrase that says the first number plus the second number equals the sum with a period at the end. And I output that information in a message box. If you want to pause the video at this point and emulate both the visual interface and the code that I've written, please feel free to go ahead and do so. For this video, what we're trying to demonstrate is that there is an issue with how I am inputting information. I want to bring text information from a text box into my code, but I want to use that information as numeric information. And the information from the form isn't formatted that way. And in fact, you can see that there's an error in my code right now where txt first number.text and txt second number.text had read the squigglies underneath them. And if you hover over them, you can see the error message cannot implicitly convert type string to int. The variable types that I've created here, int first number and int second number, are preceded by int. The kind of variable that I'm trying to create is an integer variable, which contains whole numbers. The variables we've created in previous videos were string variables, and they contain letters, both uppercase and lowercase, symbols, and numbers, but the numbers in those cases are actually text, not numeric values. I'm trying to create a variable that contains numbers that I can manipulate using mathematical formulas, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And so this is a different type of variable. It's actually a more limited type of variable. It can't contain letters or symbols. It can only contain numeric values. And in this case, it can only contain whole numbers, both positive and negative, but no decimal places. The error we're dealing with is this data conversion error, and that's what we're going to discuss today. There are a few ways that we can tackle conversion from one type of data to another, and I'm going to show you two of them. In class, we'll have a much more detailed discussion of how to convert from different data types, both implicit and explicit, but for this video, we're going to try to keep this example fairly straightforward. The first type of conversion that I'm going to show you is using the convert class and then adding the type of conversion we want to do. And I'm using IntelliSense to choose toInt32. And I'm going to add a parenthesis both in front of my txt first number text and after my txt first number.text. The semicolon is on the outside of the parentheses. Let's talk about what we just accomplished. This convert is a class that contains all kinds of members. And in this case, the member that I'm interested in is toInt32. And it is a method. It is going to accomplish a goal. I think about methods as verbs, so they do something for us. And in this case, convert.toInt32 is going to take an input, which in this case is going to be the text property for txt first number, and convert that information into a numeric value, in this case an integer value. We could do something similar for our second variable. And you'll note I typed that fairly quickly. If you practice enough inside the Visual Studio coding interface, you'll be able to use IntelliSense to type these sorts of equations fairly quickly as well. But if you need to catch up with me, always feel free to pause the video and take your time while you're learning. At this point, this program will run. And if we type two different numbers in our interface and click add them, we'll get a phrase that says 4 plus 5 equals 9. Great. It is possible, in this case, however, to break our code. I could type 4.5, which is not an integer value, and when I click add them, I will get a runtime error, specifically in this case, a format exception error. And you can see input string was not in a correct format. I'm trying to take a text property, which in this case had the textual value, 4.5, and I'm trying to convert that value into an integer value. And we can't do that because 4.5 isn't an integer. If I ran this program again and I tried to type text in either of these values, I would get a similar error. The input string is not in the correct format. So something like convert to int32 works if the information we're receiving is properly formed. But it is certainly possible that the information we're receiving is not properly formed. So I'm going to show you an alternative to converting textual information into numeric information that is a little bit more robust. Instead of using the convert to int32, we're going to pursue this problem in two steps. The first thing I'm going to do is create a variable, int first number, and give it a default starting value of 0. We need to initialize this variable before I can pursue the second step. For the second step, I'm going to demonstrate a method called TryParse. TryParse is available to us for all different types of numeric types. In this case, the numeric type I'm interested in is int32, a 32-bit integer value. I'm typing a period, and then I'm choosing TryParse, which you can click on or use the arrow keys on your keyboard to get to, or you could start typing the word try and then eventually hit the tab key. What TryParse does is it attempts to take input and convert to a specific data type output. But unlike a convert to int32 or a convert to another data type, it has a soft fail state where if it doesn't succeed, the code will keep running. It just won't actually parse the information. It will basically skip past it. So let's try this out. In this case, I'm going to try to parse my txt first number.txt, and if I'm successful, I'm going to output to my int first number. For this line of code to work, int first number has to have previously been defined, which is why I have that int first number equals 0 as a separate line of code. In this case, the TryParse method will attempt to convert the text property of first number into an integer variable. And if it's successful, it will store that result in int first number. If it fails, int first number will remain its previous value, which in our case is 0, and then the code will proceed without any errors. Let's prove it. If I run my program and I type 4 and 5, I get the proper output. If I type 4.5 and 5, you'll see that I don't get quite the right output, but I don't get an error either. The code behind the scenes didn't convert my 4.5 to integer, so int first number remained a 0. The second value converted properly, and my output is what the output is. Convert to int32 or convert to another data type could result in a runtime error if the input isn't properly formed. TryParse will almost never result in a runtime error, but could result in a logical error. And the user might think their data is being processed properly when in fact it is not. So you want to be careful with using either one of these. Both of them have their upsides and their downsides. We'll talk in a later video about how we can use TryParse to prevent logical errors from occurring by taking advantage of one other feature that it has built in, but we'll save that for another day. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.